So I wanted to introduce you all to the progress we've made so far in developing prototypes for what we're calling the primary mechanics, or the primary verbs that we have in Aqualab. As a quick refresher on the project, Aqualab is a science practices project. So we're really investigating how we can make video games that teach scientific observation, experimentation, modeling, and arguing from evidence. And in the proposal, we really didn't talk about observation per se, but as we started thinking about experimentation and how we wanted to do that in a game, we split this out as its own kind of primary mechanic. This prototype is not designed to show the overall gameplay really at all, but instead we're really addressing these primary mechanics as things that we've got to get right in order for this game to function and to be a useful learning tool and research tool. So in the next couple minutes, what I'm going to do is just walk through each one of these mechanics and show you how you can interface with them yourself. They're not fully built out, so that it doesn't make 100% sense what to do all the time. But I'm hoping that by watching these videos, you can have enough an understanding for us to have a good conversation about it. So let's go ahead and jump right into observation. So in the observation mechanic, the goal really is for us to go to a particular ecosystem underwater and to find the kinds of life that are there so that we can have them kind of join our vocabulary. We'll call it the bestiary informally. And we'll be able to use then the different species that we observe out in the wild of this ecosystem in order to do other things later on. So we've got a little bit of dialogue engine here that's playing out between ourselves and Kevin, who has become the stand-in name for our kind of guide through the project. And this is all just flavor text. It's kind of just for fun right now. Obviously, none of this is final. So what we are doing here, this little white box is going to represent us. This will end up being a ROV in a future version. Right now it's just a box because we don't have art for it. And what we're going to do is cruise around this environment in order to find different species that we haven't currently identified. So as you kind of click around, this little thing will cruise around with you. And then by right-clicking, you go into scan mode. And here we can find anything that's nearby that is a new life form. So right here we can see all of these things. And if we hold on it, we can scan. And we find out that this is a kelp. And now kelp is something that we can work with in the rest of the game. Again, we didn't have art for this, so we just put in this little piece of kind of clip art. But here we can find that we've located an otter, who is also part of this ecosystem that we're interested in. And as we keep cruising around within this environment, here we go. We're also going to see one of these little critters, which is an urchin. And we can continue looking around within this environment. There might be more species for us to capture that are, not necessarily relevant to a particular challenge, but they're, certainly within an ecosystem. So this practice here really of observation is just about exploring an environment, kind of seeing what's there, getting an understanding of potentially even how some of the things are interacting with each other, but mostly it's about capturing the different species that exist. When we're done in this demo, we can check in at any point with Kevin and see if Kevin has any advice for us. But for now, it's again just a little bit of kind of playful dialogue. After a few minutes, though, Kevin will warn you that you need to progress or you're potentially stuck. And Kevin is particularly responsive to whatever's on screen at the time. So here, let's use Kevin to transition. Okay, otters. Seems like it. Carl didn't know anything about otters. So this is a new discovery that we've got. Okay, so now we've kind of modeled observation and capturing some new species that now we can talk about and think about moving forward. So now we're going to look at an experiment. So experiments in this game are really modeled in a lot of ways, I think most strongly after Amy's lab. And we're really interested in the ways with an experiment that you can pull out the different conditions that exist within different, water from a chemistry perspective, as well as some of different species, and really eliminate a lot of variables and design an experiment that tells us something about the behaviors that take place for a species, and then later even some quantitative relationships. So it might be that a behavior that we look for here in a food web related topic would be, what eats what kind of species, and we could determine that in an experiment, like we will here in a second. But later we could also try to find out, well, how much quantitatively does one species want to eat of another, and quantitatively, how do we describe that? So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Let's just look at what we've built for experiments right now. Again, none of this art is designed to be, formal. It's really just placeholder. So we've got some dialogue again that helps guide our process through this and kind of, add a little bit of conversation to it. And here, what we're going to use is this little interface over here. And in the prototype, we only have one kind of experiment. We've been calling it the foundational knowledge tank. So this is a tank of water that you can put stuff in and observe them over time. But we, as you'll see in our mock-ups, we've got ideas of a experiment control tank, and we've got ideas around things like a race tank to find out, how parasites affect things. And again, I think there's a whole set of options we can have for the different kinds of experiment designs that we can lay out. But here we'll pick the one kind that we have, a single tank. Then we would kind of populate the tank with a certain kind of baseline ecosystem. So this is all of the settings, if you want to call it that, of the water that we found in our last observation. So things like pH, salinity, dissolved oxygen, temperature, available sunlight, all of those would be, set by just kind of like picking an ecosystem that we're going to mimic in our experiment. And like species, these are the kinds of things that we could collect as we go into new environments. Here, again, it's a prototype, so we haven't built this out, but we want the player to state a hypothesis. So you'll see some interfaces during the presentation that we give showing a sentence builder-like interface that allows you to describe what species does what verb in what direct object. So a hypothesis here might be that we believe that that the otters eat kelp, and if we put otters and kelp into a tank, we could test that hypothesis. So otters eat kelp would be the kind of hypothesis that could be formed. So now we select what goes into our tank, and these are the things that we've captured. So we put some kelp in, we put some urchins in, and we're ready to start the experiment. So the experiment, the whole point of this is we've limited a lot of variables, and we just want to see how these different critters respond to each other and respond to their environment. And we're looking to find new behaviors. And here we can see like something new has happened, and it's giving this indicator, maybe we should take a look. So I click on one of these, we'll find that we observe this behavior that urchins eat kelp. And now we've got a observation. We have really seen that urchins eat kelp. And we can continue doing this, looking for any other behaviors that might exist. For example, the rate that urchins multiply, or maybe kelp growing at a certain rate, or later in the chemistry kind of world, watching the dissolved oxygen in the tank change over time. But any of these changes are things that we can observe, and we're using this kind of snapshot-like interface to capture it. So at some point here, Kevin is saying, hey, like we already know that, and we're really not, learning anything new. So let's wrap up this experiment. So I click back over here, and I can decide to end the experiment. And we've come to the end, and we really just got one new behavior out of it, which is urchins eat kelp. Again, so there's in the drawings you'll see different places to take this, but this is what we've built right now. and a little more dialogue.